last week I was supposed to do my Evangelion review, and because I was working on the Suzaku and Euphemia video and some other stuff as well, I didn't get a chance to make it, obviously. So we're going to make up for that by doing it right now. Let's get into that. So the way to start off talking about Evangelion, and it's non-spoiler, but I'm just saying there's so many areas to talk about Evangelion. The first thing I always like to think about is that if I was to do a mecha Mount Rushmore, you know, the 4 greatest mecha anime that influenced everything else, I don't know what the 4 would be, but I'm pretty confident that Evangelion and Mobile Suit Gundam would be on that mountain. I've thought about like Macross and Mazinger Z, and there's other good ones as well that came on, you know, back in the day that really influenced mecha as we know it. But regardless of which one you'd put on there, I think most people can't deny that Evangelion, for all the flaws it has, and it's got plenty, it definitely influenced mecha, mostly for the better. I say for better because they did put some stuff in it that was not great, and you see a lot of mech anime that have come out since that replicated that I don't know why they decided to double down on that stuff, but be as it may, Neon Genesis Evangelion completely changed the mecha genre. Every mecha I've seen since, on some level, borrows from Evangelion. Some borrow from Evangelion, and their body sells a heart attack. You know, like Razafon, brain-powered, even Code Geass, which is funny, because I didn't realize until I watched Evangelion last week of how much Code Geass took from Evangelion. And when I get that video out next year, you're going to be really surprised at how much the two shows mirrored each other. I mean, it's crazy how much they borrow from it. But I'm not here to discuss Neon Genesis Evangelion's impact on other anime. I'm just saying as like a general statement here that without Evangelion, we wouldn't have Razafon, Eureka 7, Full Metal Panic, Code Geass, Cross Angie, Guilty Crown, etc., etc. And that's why when people are very critical about Evangelion, again, understandably so, just remember that while it wasn't the best show ever, we have to thank it for all the great mechas that have come out since. We also have to, of course, give it credit for the ones that come out that are awful, like Cross Angie and Guilty Crown, and many others as well. With that prelude out of the way, let's get into the basic plot of Evangelion. So, essentially, we're in Tokyo, and these angels are attacking Earth. I won't say why or what they are, not relevant for this situation. And then Shinji happens to be in the city at the same time. He's supposed to meet up with someone named Misato. Misato is this, as I remember reading one review of Evangelion, one of my books, as this big busty purple hair girl, even though compared to most modern anime, Misato wouldn't even be noticed. But anyhow, she's this very attractive older lady who comes to help Shinji, and of course she comes to pick him up, rather. She comes to pick him up, of course, at the worst time in the middle of action, and funny enough, if she didn't get there soon enough, he would have been killed by the angel, because while he's waiting for her to come and get him, you see the UN forces fighting against the angels, and of course, well, it's one angel, and their artillery is absolutely worthless. It has absolutely no effect on these angels. They even tried this mine, which Misato was like, don't use the mine, and of course, they did. It was absolutely ineffective. If it was like a Pokemon battle, it'd be like, UN force use mine. On Angel, it was, ineffective, which is most of the military against the angels. That's why they need the Avas to fight them. So Misato brings Shinji to NERV, which is an organization fighting against the angels. And when she does, they show Shinji this Evangelion, and they say, you need to pilot this. And he's like, I'm not piloting this. How can I pilot this? I don't even know what this even is. But they chose him because he can. He's the third child, I believe, because I think Rei's the first and Asuka second, and it makes Shinji the third. He's the third child. If I got that wrong, I do apologize. I'm not a Evangelion scholar, although after I do my video analysis between Code Geass and Evangelion, I think my knowledge will be a lot better at that point. So Shinji wasn't going to do it, but what happened was Gendo's like, okay, his father, by the way, if you don't want to pilot the Ava, then that's cool. We'll get Rei involved. And Rei's, of course, in a bad state. She's in a hospital bed, and they bring her out to pilot it. She looks like she could die any minute. She's in pain, probably bleeding internally. I think one of her eyes is covered by a bandage. But the point is, like, Gendo clearly knows that she can't do this. So the reason why he did it was to convince Shinji, or to manipulate him, to go and pilot the Evangelion, which Shinji does because he feels bad for Rei. And true as anyone would have felt bad for Rei because it was kind of messed up. Now, spoiler alert a little bit, if you know about Rei's character, then you realize that it doesn't really matter. So Shinji gets an Evangelion, pilots the Evangelion. Before that, though, he's able to move one of the arms to block the rubble that was coming in from the Angel, because basically the Angel found their base and was actually attacking NERV's headquarters. So Shinji has to do this to protect everyone. Although if he didn't, again, Rei would have taken over Although I speculate she would have died and he would have died too. So in retrospect, if Shinji didn't take control of the Evangelion, they probably would have died. But he did, and he defeats the angel. It was not easy, a lot of growing pains for sure, but he does take it down. From this point on, every episode is basically the following: an angel comes to Earth, and Rei, Shinji, Asuka, or some combination of the three of them has to destroy it. And that's basically the show in a nutshell. There are tons of other elements I'm not discussing for spoiler purposes, like a Dead Sea Scrolls, Adam, the second impact, a third impact, Kaji and Misato's relationship, Gendo's relationship with other people, which is one of the most disturbing parts of the story. And I can move on to the next topic, which is the characters. I can give you a quick summation of what I thought of everybody. So Shinji, he is a 14-year-old boy. He has issues with his confidence issues, self-esteem issues. He goes through a lot of existential crisis for a 14-year-old. And his father's a piece of crap, so it makes sense. He doesn't really have much relationship with his father or other people. He kind of just lives alone. I'm not sure what he was doing before the events of the story, and I have a lot of questions about that, which I can't go into because, again, spoilers. I'll probably stop saying that for the rest of the review. You guys know at this point. He's a very polarizing character. Some people consider him just a stupid emo kid. And because I've seen so many stories now where people are forced to do things they don't want to do, like pilot a robot or fight a war than asked for, I'm becoming more and more sympathetic to these characters. In Blue Gender, I don't know why I forgot his, I think his name was Yuji, he was forced to help out the resistance against the Blue. And people hate his character for the same reason, how he was kind of, whiny and complaining and annoying, but given the situation he was put into, I think Yuji handled it well, and I think Shinji did the same thing. Granted, I think because he's a kid, he does act a little cocky at some points, but that's totally fine. It makes sense. It never really came across as overly annoying. Although, with that said, I didn't particularly like the character. I liked Ayato from Rasafun a lot more, and I can't explain why, but I just did. Well, because spoilers. But other than that, Shinji's not a bad character. He's just not my favorite. I'm like neutral on him. I don't hate him. I don't love him. I think he does a decent job in the story. He didn't annoy me, and that's important, because if a character doesn't annoy me, I can at least tolerate them on screen. And I had no issues with him. I was sympathetic to his situation. I understand, not on that level, but on a smaller level of when you're put in a situation where you have to do something and you don't want to, but you realize that you have no choice in the matter. And I completely understand the whole times where he wants to quit and leave, but come back and leave and come back. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I never had issues with that. In terms of like his other quirks, I guess, the relation between Asuka and Rei, I don't know. I didn't see anything wrong with it. It was totally fine. Moving on to Rei. I mean, what's great about Rei, and again, I don't want to do too much of a comparison here, but I noticed that she shares a lot of similarities, or I should rather say, C2 and Anya share a lot of similarities with Rei. I can't go further besides that, but if you know Rei and Ayano's characters, Ayano is the W0 member from Akihito Exile. But Anya and C2 share a lot of similarities with Rei in that they are characters who, they were following orders, they seem emotionless, no personality, but deep down there's a dark past with them, and they do want to be loved and cared for, but they don't understand what that means, and it's quite interesting. Rei's character is very interesting. For someone who doesn't talk much or even do much, honestly, there's a lot going on with her. Specifically, her relationship with Gendo, which is kind of odd to me, but I guess it makes sense. And it's interesting. She's supposed to be like this, a child, a girl, but her room is like nothing like an average girl's room. It's basically an empty apartment, nothing in there except for random items she carries around. I feel generally bad for her because she is simply used as like a cannon fodder to pilot the Eva to fight the angels. And seemingly that's all she was meant to do. I'm not sure if it's a huge spoiler, but that's her character in a nutshell. I like when she's discovering life and acting like a real person, but it's those scenes are few and far between. And ultimately, just like Shinji, I don't hate the character. I don't love the character. She doesn't really bother me. I kind of like how they made C2 similar, but they made her grow as a character. I think the problem with Rei, she doesn't grow much. But the problem is she can't because she's cannon fodder. So it's, I don't know. I don't have one way or other with either of those two characters. Now with Asuka, well, that's a completely different story, and that is I don't like Asuka's character. And to be clear, I do understand the point of her character. Asuka is a half German, half Japanese half-breed, kind of like Colin is a half Japanese, half Britannian half-breed. Both have red hair and both pilot mechs that are red. Coincidence? I think not. Anyhow, Asuka Langley. She requires a lot of, how I put this, she wants to be praised by other people, and she hates being the worst. She wants to be the best, and if she's not the best, she feels worthless, and she's going through a lot of struggle of her past because of her family life and all this stuff. And again, I understand that. That's why she acts the way she does. That's why she's very temperamental and angry at everyone. But there comes a point where it's too much. It's just too much. I can't. Early on, I was like, okay, I get it. You're aggressive and you're angry and stuff. But you guys have been working together, her and Shinji and Misato for a while now. Can you please calm down for God's sakes? It's not funny or interesting. It's just rather annoying. And even the grown-ups were telling her, like, dude, stop being annoying. Like, stop being obnoxious. It comes to a point where it's not interesting. I know they're kids, okay? So kids are obnoxious. Kids act up. But with Asuka, it was overdone to the point where I don't even care anymore. Now, granted, to kind of go against that point, I do care about her, like, in succeeding in winning in her fights, because there are times where she's in a bad situation. I can't say the exact reason, but there's one episode where she's fighting an angel, and it was not going well. It really wasn't. I was like, no, don't kill Asuka. Like, I've connected to her. Like, I care about her, okay? But her interactions with the characters, it's so frustrating. Like, when she's with Kaji, she's very friendly and kind. That whole thing is so weird to me, even discussing that. When she talks to Shinji and Rei, and it's just really hard to like someone like that. Like, they gave this whole backstory of why she is the way she is, and even though I understand that, it was still very hard to like the character. I didn't want her to die, if that makes any sense, but I didn't like her. One other thing I want to mention about Asuka, and this is it, I want to actually post this later on for, like, a poll. I don't think she's a tsundere. Hard, maybe a big take right there, but, tsunderes tend to be overly aggressive, but it's because they care about the protagonist and slowly warm up to them. But Asuka never warms up to Shinji in this story. In fact, I'd argue, in the most non-spoiler way possible, she continually hates him more and more as the story progresses, to the point where they're not even close to friends anymore. I mean, the way Asuka's journey in this story is it awful. I don't mean, like, the quality of the writing. I just mean, like, what happens is awful. And so I never got the impression she was a tsundere, because the only thing she does that's tsundere-like is she's overly aggressive. But the rest of her behavior is nothing tsundere at all. She really hates Shinji, or dislikes him. I don't know. Or maybe she hates herself because she hates Shinji. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, is when you look at someone like Rin or Chidori or other classic tsunderes, she doesn't really follow what they do at all. She's just overly aggressive. I wouldn't call her a tsundere. Again, that's a hot take right there. I'm sure most won't agree. That was just thinking, like, is she really a tsundere? I don't think so. Moving on. Gendo Ikari. All I'm going to say is about this guy, I hated him when I watched the show like 6 years ago. I know it's been a long time. And I hated him. I was like, I know I hate this guy, but I don't remember what the reason was. And I watched it again, and I'm like, okay, this guy is a piece of crap. I don't care what the reasons were for the whole Nerve Foundation, which I can't really go into. But what he does before that and after, wow. Just wow. What a piece of crap. I mean, you think Charles is awful. At least Charles... Well, you know what? Charles is just as bad. They're both equally bad. And in fact, they're also very similar characters, despite looking absolutely ridiculous. The only thing I'll give Gendo credit on is he popularized this pose. That's it. That's all I give him credit for. Other than that, he can piss off. Wow. Just wow. That's all I'm going to say. Misato is probably one of the only characters in the story I generally liked. So, because she generally cared about Shinji, Asuka, and Rei, and she constantly fought the other Nerve members because they didn't, and she was a mother to Shinji that he had, but didn't have because she died, I guess. Spoiler alert. I don't know. I guess that's a spoiler. She generally cared about Shinji. That's why I liked her character, and she's a good person, regardless of maybe her self-loathing about certain situations, especially with Kaji, but she's actually a good person. I rooted for her most of the time in the story, and when she had emotional issues, I kind of I felt for that. I relate to her much more than the kids because I'm an adult now. Like, I'm an older adult. She's 29, pushing 30, and I can understand what she's thinking about that age because I'm around that age. So it's the other thing about Evangelion in general. The older you get, it hit as my friend said, it hits different because of just how you understand it as an adult versus a kid. I first watched it when I was in my early 20s. Now I'm 30, so like it's completely different experience because I understand what the characters are going through. I've seen more shows since, and I've obviously had life experience. So putting all that together, that's why I appreciate Misato and Kaji's character for that matter. Kaji was basically Asuka's guardian, like Misato was to Shinji. And Kaji's also a good guy. He's kind of they say he's a chauvinist. I don't think he is. Misogynist, I don't think so. He's very friendly to Misato, and he loves her a lot. And why they couldn't be together was whatever. But he's a great character, and one of the reasons why I kept watching the show was him and Misato. Ritsuko Akai. She's this doctor with blonde hair who's also 30 years old, and she jokes around, well, not she joke around, but they joke around between her and Misato about how they're not married, how they're pushing 30, and how their life could be over soon. Very interesting how these older stories discuss topics that are still relevant today, which is why I said in the beginning that this anime was a breath of fresh air despite being over a decade old, which is, I think, quite an achievement in of itself. The next thing I wanted to mention, next thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'm going to move on to the next element of the story. Maya Ibuki is a random lieutenant who works in Nerve. And I say random not because she's like a nobody, but she's not a main character. But I really liked her a lot. Maya is like Ritsuki, but a friendlier and not as smart version. But I found her antics to be adorable. She genuinely cared about each operation. And I'm not alone, by the way, because I checked the Wikipedia page, and again, it's Wikipedia, so take what it is. But they said that her merchandise sales was actually pretty good, considering she was just a minor character. So I wasn't the only one who thought Maya Ibuki was a really great character. I liked her a lot. I don't know why. I guess because she was pleasant. Everyone else was a jackass in the story, so I guess because she was pleasant, I don't know, it's weird. So there's that. That's my thoughts on all the major characters in the story. I know I missed like a bunch, but we'll be here all day, and this is not an Evangelion channel. Although, if you want me to do Evangelion stuff, I'd be happy to do so in the future. Besides Code Geass comparisons, which will definitely be coming. One more note I wanted to say about the characters. I know I just passed that point, but just one thing I forgot to bring up. With the different Eva pilots, just one thing I forgot to mention. I like how they made each of them all distinctly different, which is important because they could have made them all the same. I know that sounds like really John Madden-y, like obvious, but it's really not, and a lot of shows will try to make characters different, but they're just too similar. At least with Shinji, Asuka, and Rei, there are 3 different personalities, 3 different people, and you can't describe one while describing the other. So I don't necessarily like any of the characters in that respect, but I'll give them credit. They made all 3 of them distinctly different, and that's an accomplishment to itself. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is the Evangelions themselves. Now, what I find interesting is that when you just go on YouTube or really any site and they discuss Neon Genesis Evangelion, the one that seems to come up all the time is the ending, which is understandable since it was very confusing and vague. And I should have mentioned in the beginning, but just like Razafon, you're going to have to watch the show 2 to 3 times, read a bunch of articles, get some books. I don't know. Evangelion is quite complicated. But anyways, the Evangelions themselves, the point I'm making is that the Evangelions themselves are never discussed in the same vein as the ending. Everyone's talking about what the third impact meant and what those last episodes were. Was it budget crisis? Was it the show actually having a real take on anything? But no one talked about how cool the Evas are. Their design, the overall idea of almost a living mech that has to be connected to like a power cable for it to fight, and how these things are not just mechanical robots. These are living, breathing things that we imprisoned for our own use for whatever reason. I can't obviously say why. And the whole mechanism of how that they get into the Evas and how they pilot them, the whole nerve damage and how it affects them when different parts are affected, the whole weapons they use, the synchronous raid, the whole operation to get them going and how they were made originally, and the whole dark aspect to the Evas. There's so much lore they show you in this anime, and I imagine the books probably expand more, and so does the manga from what I understand. It's really something impressive, and that's something that I don't know why people don't discuss it as much. Maybe they do. I don't see mainstream discussions on it. But the Evangelions themselves are really cool looking, unique. Again, this is a company, Gainax, when they were watching, Macross and Gundam and getting inspired by those anime, and they made something that looked completely different than what came out before. And I think since that time, people have tried to do the same thing. That's why, Razafon looks so much different than any mecha you've seen before. Or Bakurano, the same concept. Like the designs, I mean, it seems like Neon Genesis Evangelion really popularized, and I could be wrong here, I haven't researched this fully, but just from anecdotal evidence, it seems like Evangelion popularized making mechs so out there, bizarre, strange designs to them, because each of the Evas are just so weird. If you had only watched anime before they came out, you wouldn't even know what to make of it. It's mind-blowing. Nowadays, you probably wouldn't think much of it because you've seen probably more modern mecha shows which have taken Eva's influence and used it in their own stories. But I'm like, the Evas are really cool. The way they're designed, how the pilots operate them, the whole system in place. They're constantly throwing out like scientific terms about how it works and why it's not working. And I've always been amazed at all the research they must have put in to make this actually a possibility, and why, even though these Evas couldn't exist in real life, you believe it. And that's a testament to the good writing animation of Evangelion, which I wish more people would talk about, as opposed to the whole, what did it mean? And is Evangelion just a cry out for help? Which maybe it is, but like, let's look at the peripherals of the story, and I don't see much analysis on that. And speaking of that, I have to comment the show in our area as well. The battle between the Evas and the Angels are some of the best mecha battles I've seen in any show. I am amazed at how every single conflict is different. Every angel is different from the next. It's not like a power system where, like, you defeat this angel, so the next one will be stronger. It's just different. I really appreciate that, because so many stories, both before Eva and after, love to do this thing where, like, because a new enemy appears, it has to be stronger than the old one. And with Evangelion, that's not really the case. It's just different. It's not necessarily stronger or weaker than the previous. They just need a new tactic to defeat it. Every single angel requires different tactics to defeat them because they're different. Their attack patterns are different. So every single conflict feels fresh and different, which is good because it can get really old. I mean, as I said again, the synopsis, it's just 3 pilots fighting against angels for episode after episode, but they always make it unique and interesting. One can hack the system, one can clone itself, one can mess with you mentally, one can throw you into a pocket dimension, I think. I mean, there's so many variations to these different angels. So the fact they had to constantly come up with new strategies to defeat them, and oftentimes, and this is, again, testament to the show's excellent writing and also just the animation itself, there was a lot of tension in these battles. And keep in mind, I've already watched the show, and I know that films have come out. You kind of know if characters are going to live or die or not based on either you've watched it or you've heard about it. And yet, I still got really nervous during some of these scenes, and that's really good writing, because there were certain conflicts, like one with the lava, where I was like, oh my god, they're actually going to die. And I know they're not going to, but the fact that I think they're going to, it just shows that the show is just well written in that respect. I really was blown away by how every single battle was unique and how they had to new techniques and strategy to defeat each one. And it wasn't like just a simple, like, move this direction and fire. It was more like, we got to plan this out for weeks. I mean, the Asuka and Shinji training sequence to become perfectly in sync, that was an entire long process. Or using all of Tokyo's power to destroy an angel. These are not simple things they have to come up with. They got to think on the fly and come up with a new strategy to win. It could be a long, ongoing, arduous process. And oftentimes when they win, you feel like they barely won. Which is good too, because you understand why these angels are a threat. Not just because each one itself can't be destroyed by the military that humans have and requires Eva assistance, but each one is different in how it attacks. So it really explains or shows how of a menace these things are, and each of the battles really escalates and improves them. That's why the battles in this story they're so good. And I wish more people would talk about them as opposed to, again, what did it all mean? Which, I mean, who cares what it all meant? But the next thing I want to mention was the art. The art of Evangelion is also very impressive, considering this was, again, a 90s anime. And as you know, a lot of stuff was hand-drawn. They only use the same CGI as they do today. And in a sense, the animation for this story is a character to itself. There are so many scenes where you look at the backgrounds and the details, and you're saying to yourself, I already know what's going on here without anyone telling me. Like when Shinji goes to Misato's house or apartment, before she even explains she's a slob and any of that stuff, you see beer everywhere, food. The whole place is a mess. You can tell that Misato is her mind is definitely cluttered, because they say, a cluttered room is a cluttered mind, or a clean room is a clean mind. Things like that. I just like how you can look around the nerve building, the different paperwork all around the floor, how all the systems are functioning. This looks like a real living and breathing, organization. And you can tell from the backgrounds of just how much thought was put into this. Again, with the Eva designs, how they work, the different chambers, the outfits the characters wear. It's really impressive. I can't think of anything else similar except for Perfect Blue, if you've seen that movie by Satoshi Kon. So Satoshi Kon, his film Perfect Blue is a great scene where you see the main character, and I forgot her name because it's been a while, but you go to her room and you can see it's a cluttered mess. There's a fish tank, and there's a bed that's like not kempt. It's like, I guess, unmade. I'm not sure if that's the right word or not. The point is, you get the impression that this person, even though she's supposedly this movie star, not movie star, a famous pop singer, she actually is like living a dual life, and she's clearly not all there mentally because of the way her room is kept. And this is, by the way, an observation made by Eyepatch Wolf, I think his name, which he made a good video on Perfect Blue many years ago. The point I'm trying to make is that if you compare like Perfect Blue's brilliant background and how it shapes the whole environment, you can look at the same thing when it comes to Evangelion, where every background scene has like a character to itself. I was just blown away by, you just look around, you're like, you can see what's clearly going on here. So many things are hinted for you because of it. It's definitely one of the better parts of the story. I could go on, but let me discuss the things I didn't like. So what I didn't like about Evangelion, number one, I don't like the nudity with Shinji, Asuka, and Rei. And I understand when it comes to like the psychological, mental images that occur, it makes sense, I guess. But there are some scenes in this anime make me very uncomfortable watching, and I know that's the point, but I don't need to see it to get the point. Okay, sometimes it's not funny, sometimes it's outright disturbing, and there's a whole thing between Kaji and Asuka, and I don't know what was going on with that. That was really weird. Thankfully, it was one-sided, and Asuka and Kaji just completely ignored her. I hope it was just a parent thing. If it wasn't, then yeesh. I know nudity is, for some reason, very common in mecha anime. I'm not sure if it's Evangelion's fault or not. Either way, I don't mind, like, Misato, at least she's 29, so it kind of makes sense you would see her naked. But there are some scenes with Asuka and Rei that are, I mean, it's very nitpicky, but it's just kind of annoying and unnecessary, and it makes you very uncomfortable. When I was much younger, I might have not felt that way, which is also kind of weird. But as a 30-year-old, I know. No, thank you. I don't want to see naked 14-year-olds. Thank you very much. Next thing I should mention is, in case it wasn't obvious, I don't care for most of the characters in the story, which is annoying and depressing because I do love the Evas, the environment, the lore, but I don't care for most of the characters in the story, and that's a problem. Compared to something like Razafan, I loved all the characters, so it's just frustrating because I really appreciate what the anime did in terms of the basic narrative until the ending, and then the Evas themselves and the role it created and how it influenced every mecha out there. But I didn't like most of these characters, and that's why many times I was watching the story, I wanted to keep going for reasons I didn't know, like maybe to find out what the answer was. But I cared about the plot, put it simply. What happened to the characters at some level didn't affect me, again, except for Asuka. For some reason, I just felt bad about Asuka. Again, that could be a whole nother discussion for another time. So that's another con about the story. The ending itself, now this might be controversial, but I didn't really hate the ending. The first time I watched it, I did. Second time, now I understand what the attention behind it, the story behind it. I don't hate the ending. In fact, there are many times in the story where it hints at what's going to happen. So if you pay attention to the story, you'll actually kind of figure it out. With the ending of Evangelion, I generally thought it made sense for what they were setting up for. Obviously, it could have been way better, and any ending that you need to watch a film or listen to 1,000 explanations to understand it is not necessarily a good ending. So I'm not saying Evangelion's ending is fantastic. I'm just saying that I personally don't hate it now that I understand the background behind it. So some people won't like it. In fact, most don't. And some people even say it ruined the anime, which is a very understandable argument. For me, what ruins the anime is the characters themselves just never appealed to me. I think they're all well written, I just didn't care. The final thought I'll say about Evangelion is that it is the anime that started it all in this respect. You can see its influence, like I said, everywhere around in different mecha anime. The characters, while I don't care for them, I still think they're well written and unique and different, which is always important to any story. Same with the mechas as well. The mecha battles are fantastic and are a very important part of the story. Even though there's other ones going on in the plot, they did a good job with like the whole revelations behind why things are happening, plus the battles. Nothing really like overshadows the other. I think you can watch both. You can watch her both and walk away feeling satisfied. I gave the show a 7 out of 10, and I don't really think I'm going to change that score, which is really sad because I thought maybe watching again would change it, but I mean, maybe 7.5 or 8 out of 10 if I'm being really generous, but 7 out of 10 was the score I gave it. If you want to watch Evangelion, this is the saddest part actually, besides everything I just mentioned. It's only on Netflix, and it's a really bad dubbing. It's not the original dub. So I'm not sure why they did that. My suggestion would be to go online to the library, maybe it has it there, or buy the Platinum Edition or the Blu-ray or something else, because Netflix's version is not that great. Now, if you want to watch the new films that came out, Amazon Prime has all of those. That is another topic to itself. Maybe in the future I'll do a whole comparison between the Evangelion films and the original anime. Wouldn't that be something? But anyways, that's my thoughts on Evangelion.